Did you know that the car brand closest to knocking Tesla off of the top spot in the UK when it comes to private electric car sales is MG? And something tells me that might happen sooner rather than later. And not because of politics, no, it's because the new MGS5 has a particular innovation inside that Tesla is falling behind on. So in this review, we're going to see how this new MGS5 stacks up as a practical family car, how much real-world range it has, and whether it's fun to drive. But before we do that, we have to talk about this car's name because, yeah, this isn't the first time that MG's gone gunning for Audi, but having S5 in the name does feel a little bit more on the nose. So much so, in fact, that I asked MG this morning, has Audi sent its lawyers knocking? And well, they said no, not yet, because of one thing, and that is the lack of space in the name. It's not MGS5 like Audi S5, it's MGS5. In fact, it's MGS5 EV. I don't know about you, but I don't think I'll be taking legal advice from MG. Now, I really want to talk to you about the tech in this car, but first I should give you a bit of context with its pricing because it is really, really competitive. Now, if you go for the smaller battery entry car, it's going to cost £28,500. But even if you go for a top trim long range car, you'll be spending £33,500, which is comparable with entry level versions of the Skoda Elroq and even the Hyundai Kona Electric. Now, it wasn't that long ago that you probably would have wanted an MG with a slightly more subtle badge, but on the front of this S5, it is loud and proud. So we're going to see whether it can live up to that pride. As far as design goes though, well, it definitely steals some bits from the very good looking MG Cyberster. This over here and even this front grille section down here with the centre is very much like that Cyberster car. And around here I'm seeing a little bit of MG4 as well, although now we've got this checkered flag design up top here and your actual headlights, well, they are in there. And if you come to the side of the car, you'll see on the alloy wheels, we have 18-inch wheels on this trophy top grade car, but even if you go for the entry SE, you'll still get 17-inch alloys. Now, while this is an SUV, electric SUVs often have a problem with space because their batteries eat into the floor area. But MG says that the battery in the floor of this car is shorter than a Coke can. Apparently it's 110 millimeters tall. And that's true not just for the entry-level 49 kilowatt hour car, but also our long-range 64 kilowatt hour car with its battery down here. We're going to see whether that fixes one of the problems normally associated with rear legroom. Also of concern is the fact that this car has its motor in the rear. This is a rear-wheel drive car, which means it could be quite fun to drive, but that can often mean in electric cars that you lose a bit of boot space. And before you ask, no, this car doesn't have a front boot or a frunk, which seems like a shame, not only because there is actually some space under here, but also because MG's done something different here. Look, there's no latch. You just pull the lever under there and then the bonnet opens. Much simpler. We needn't have worried about space though, and I'll show you why in just a second. But first, let's look at the rear of the car because yes, it does get the generic light bar like everything has these days, but I do like the checkered flag design in the clusters to the sides here. I think it looks quite tidy as a rear end. But in the boot, if I open up here, annoyingly, my fingers get quite dirty where they put the button there, but at least we've got an electric tailgate on this top of the range trophy model. It doesn't matter what model you go for though, you will always get this quite generous boot, which honestly has really impressed us. Not only is there enough room to swallow Jamil's aeroplane carry-on cabin bag and also my rucksack, but we've also got enough room to fit the bane of my life, our camera tripod bag, in widthways. Look, there's so much space there, and there's also an adjustable floor. You've got a bit of underfloor storage as well to hide away your charge cables. Plus, if you need more room, you can fold those rear seats down in a 60-40 configuration. Now, before I show you the tech inside the car, I want to do a really real-world test, and it's something you've probably all experienced before, because if you're running late for something and you need to get the sat nav up on your car as quickly as possible, you can't spend 10 or 15 seconds faffing around and waiting for it to all fire up. I need CarPlay from my phone to be on the screen in that car almost instantly so I can open up my sat nav. So I'm going to test it and see how quickly this MG sat nav can fire up, or in fact how quickly CarPlay fires up. So shall we do it? Let's get going. I've got the key, the car's locked and off, phone is ready to be thrown in. Let's do it. Off we go. Right. In the car, that in there, put on the brake, starting up the systems. That's quite slow. Come on, MG. Oh my God, there's a really slow startup sequence. Come on. Oh, this is slow. See, now I'm late. Here we go. Right, now it should fire up CarPlay. Come on, come on, come on. CarPlay. CarPlay. Oh, it's not connected. Yeah, CarPlay, there we go. Okay, we're on. That's time. Bit slow. Now, once it's fired up, I have to admit the system is actually much better to use. In fact, look, you can see how quick it is because look, it responds to my finger without any lagging at all. The system itself is pretty simple to use. It's very familiar if you've already got an MG. But what it gains versus not only older MGs, but also versus Tesla is a bunch of buttons. Now, you can control the climate control, some of the features in the Trophy specifically actually on the screen, including your heated seat and your heated steering wheel. But the actual climate control is all functional down here. This is where you turn your heat up or you adjust your fan speed, and you can also use manual vent controls as well. And the feeling of the buttons is pretty good. It feels much more high quality than you would think. Also, you get a lot of added functionality as a driver because the buttons on the steering wheel feature two favorite buttons down here, and I've configured them to do things that you're going to want to do on the move all the time. Now, this one allows you to adjust the regen, and I'll show you how extreme it gets on the move in just a moment. And this one allows you to adjust the driving mode as you go along. But you know what? There's something even better than both of those things, and that is if you swipe down on the screen here, you will see that I've got an MG Pilot Custom button up here. Now, if I turn it off, now what I would do if I was driving, I'd get in the car, swipe down, press this button and click confirm, and that then sets all of the car's annoying bings, bongs and nannying to a setting I like. So I can turn off all those annoying things if I don't want them to be on. Annoyingly, you still do have to press the buttons twice, and that's because of Euro NCAP. To get the car safety rating, that has to be the case. But at least it remembers your settings, even if you switch the car off and come back to it another time. That is a really key thing to have if you don't want to get annoyed at your car every time you get in it. Build quality as well is a noticeable step up in this MGS5 EV, because every time I get in an MG, things do seem to improve. And in this car, especially in the Trophy grade we have here, the quality is good. You're probably going to be thinking, what is this guy on? No, honestly, the materials, the fit and finish, it's all a step above what you've probably experienced in an MG before. Everything feels well put together and solid, you know, nothing rattles and creaks on the dash. And yes, okay, there's some fakery. I mean, perforated leather here, it's not properly perforated, and that carbon fiber on the dash, it's not carbon fiber, but it looks good. And I also like the fact that you've got big chunky cup holders. And look at this, if I lift this up here and I want to access the large amount of storage in here, if I get my head down there, I'm not going to get guillotined because it holds in the position you leave it. It's simple, but it's useful, especially when you're on the move. Also, you've got good storage room elsewhere. We've got good room under here. It doesn't make up for the fact this car doesn't have a front boot, but it's useful. And there's a nifty feature here. We've got our wireless charging mat up there, but then I think that's for your phone. You can put your phone in there as well. Additionally, I should make a big shout out to the gear selector too, because I think these are just some of the most ergonomic ones we have out there right now. There's nothing fiddly, it's easy to use on the go. And actually, talking of gear selectors, that reminds me I should really highlight another standout feature of this Trophy model here. It's something you get specifically on the top grade car, and that is, if I put it in reverse, you'll see on the camera now, we don't just have our reversing camera, but we've also got a 360 view, and that's the unique thing to the Trophy. And you can also look at the different camera angles. It's great for spotting any, you know, buggies or, I don't know, maybe parking bollards. But also, if you move along, just like a Land Rover Defender, the image of the road around you will actually move under the car, so you can steer around obstacles even when they're underneath you. That is a really useful feature, not just for when you're on an off-road course, but probably also in the city as well. And it doesn't matter what trim you go for, all drivers will face this quite nice instrument cluster. It's tucked low into the dash, it's got all the information you're going to need on it, and generally speaking, it's just easy to use on the go, and that is all you really need. Ah, yes, so this is the bit I've been most concerned about in the interior, and it's rear space, because it's an EV, there's a battery in the floor, and even with the thin battery, they don't often end up having that much room. But I'm going to say a good thing and then a bad thing. The good thing is there is actually a good amount of room here. I mean, I can get my feet under the seat ahead, even though this is as low as it will go. For most people, it would be higher. But I must confess, I can still feel my legs are a little bit higher. There's definitely a battery in the floor of this car. There's no denying it, but it's okay. And you know what? It's made much better by the fact that there's no tunnel in the floor. This is a rear-wheel drive car. So if it was petrol, there would be a drive shaft going through there, and it would create this annoying section where feet wouldn't be able to fit. But because this car is a proper EV, you don't get that. So the middle seat passenger has a good amount of legroom as well. And you know what? If you don't have a middle seat passenger, there's good news too, because you've got a nice wide armrest with a couple of cup holders, although you don't get a ski hatch. Comfort in the back is good. These seats are quite nice, and I have to say, you couldn't have an Isofix bar in much easier reach. As far as parenting goes, this is a great back end. Now, there is another advantage of having a rear-wheel drive car as opposed to a front-wheel drive car, and that is that traction under hard acceleration could be better, especially when you're doing a launch. And well, MG makes some big claims with this car's launch time, because it says with 230 horsepower, it will do 0 to 62 in just 6.3 seconds. So let's put it to the test. We've got it in sport mode. We've got our race logic ready to rock and roll. Let's do this. Right, I'm on the brake and the accelerator, and oh, that's pretty accelerative. Whew. It's pretty smooth, but we have done it in 6 seconds dead. Now that was 0 to 60, not 0 to 62, but come on, even if we had a 10th, that is quicker than claimed, and it's pretty greasy and cold today. This car does seem to overachieve in other ways as well. It rides pretty good. It's got that classic EV SUV thing where at higher speeds it really deals with the bumps nice and easily. And it's just very easy to drive at higher speed in general, but at lower speed, and if I go onto a cat's eye, it can be a bit fidgety at points. It feels nicely judged, and I think it's helped by the fact that the Bridgestones on this car are pretty chunky, even with the bigger wheel. The ride overall, I'd say, is good. There's also plenty of driver assistance features to make driving easier in this car. I mean, I mentioned those cameras and the shortcuts to driving modes and your regen as well, but you've also got adaptive cruise and all of the latest camera assistance tech, which boosts safety as well, but it means you can just munch motorway miles without much effort. And bearing in mind, this car undercuts its main rivals. You do really feel like that is good value for money. If there's a complaint, it's that we don't have shift paddles on the back of the steering wheel, so I can adjust the car's regen or the amount of energy that the battery can take back in when the car's slowing down. I can't do that on the fly, but I can just at the press of the shortcut buttons make the adjustments on the screen. That's the next best alternative. It's not as good as paddles, so I am missing that. But give them their fair credit. At least I only have to press the button once or twice to make the adjustments. If I go up to maximum regen, it's pretty strong. Now, adaptive mode means it will adjust automatically depending on the road type you're on. But if I get into strong and I come off the accelerator, there's no one behind me. Let's see if it brings the car to a stop. It's pretty much going to do it, I mean, I am getting down to a crawl and now a car's behind me. So you can definitely use this in an urban environment. It's going to reduce your workload massively. Do you know what? Turning circle is pretty good as well. And I'm not going to do a full U-turn, but look, if I do a steep angle there, the car is really keen to turn, and it does do a really good U-turn as well. It's going to be great for urban drivers. But a pleasant surprise for country drivers is actually how good handling this car is. I mean, it shares a lot with the MG4, and that's a brilliant handling car. Doesn't feel the most exciting, but the grip and the poise and the balance are really, really nice. So if I flick the car into this corner here, the body control is really good. It feels like a sporty car through the bends, but then you don't get the overly harsh feeling you get everywhere else that you would do in a more sporty SUV. So look, find a few bends here. This is a nice corner. Go into it, lean into the regen, chuck it in. It's good body control. There's a bit of lean, but it's pretty fun to drive this thing at pace. And because this is rear-wheel drive and because it's an MG, you can switch off the traction control and ESC and it will stay off. So many brands, including Alfa and their sporty stuff these days, you turn off the traction control and it just auto switches back on. But with this MG, you press the ESC off button on the screen here and it stays off, which in a rear-wheel drive car does mean you can be a little bit more exuberant. Or you can use it to manually improve the turning circle, if you know what I mean. Look, I'm going to be frank, it's not the driver's SUV of the class by a large margin, but it's impressive what it can do. But really, let's be frank, what matters is how much range you have in the real world, because more people are going to be doing long distances in these cars than launching off the line or going around bends quickly. And well, I can tell you actually, on our relatively mixed route, it's sort of an extra urban route, so outer suburban roads and a little bit of country road, we're averaging 3.6 miles per kilowatt hour, which is not bad. It's less than claimed, but it's not too shabby given that we're not driving on the most easy roads for this car. And I've got the regen only in medium, so you could get a little bit more range out of it if you ramped it up to the higher level. And actually that reminds me, if you go for the bigger battery, the long range car, there is an advantage in that the charging speed is faster. Because the battery is bigger, it does take a bit longer to charge from 10 to 80%. It will take you about 28 minutes. But because you can charge it over 130 kilowatts, well, it's only 4 minutes longer than it would take you to charge the smaller 49 kilowatt hour battery to the same percentage. So really, if you can go for the bigger battery car, it's a no-brainer really. And you know what, doing lots of miles in this car is quite nice actually, because the seats are really comfy. The seats in the front here are lovely, they're supportive and they're nice and adjustable. And in the driver's seat in this Trophy, I even have electric adjustment as well. Although the passenger, they'll have to make do with manual adjustment, and they can't even adjust the height. So yeah, it's not perfect, but when you take into account the low cost of this car, and when you think about the build quality of the interior and also the functionality as well, it leaves me thinking, Tesla has more than just a troublesome boss to be worrying about these days. But of course, if you're not ready to make the switch to electric, MG does make other models that are hybrid for families, including the ZS and also the larger HS, and they steal more than a name from Audi in a very good way.